What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Resurrect. Hopefully all of you guys watching are well. In today's video, we're going to be going over 7 tips on how to successfully sell a vehicle with a rebuilt title or a branded title known sometimes. So by extension, this can apply also to cars that have a clean title that maybe have something really ugly on a Carfax, such as structural or frame damage. Those cars can be difficult to sell as well. But understand that there is a difference between a salvage car, a rebuilt car, and a clean title car with an ugly Carfax. So for the rest of the video, I might just lump these all together and refer to them as salvage for simplification. But in some ways, these cars will be very similar. In some ways, they will be very different, but all of them are a challenge to sell. So these are my tips. This is stuff that I've learned in the past through experience, and it's worked for me. So some of this information might be useful to you. I hope it is. I'm not saying these are the best tips. I'm not saying they are correct in every single situation or that they will even work for you. But they work for me. They're a good rule of thumb, and I'm going to share them with you. So pick and choose what makes sense to you. You can discard the rest of the information. But if you do like this video and you do like this information, please subscribe, hit that thumbs up if you can, and don't forget to set up your post notifications by clicking on the bell below, as we'll continue to have videos on this subject. So if you already have a rebuilt title car that you're trying to sell and you can't, it might be due to things that happened prior to you obtaining this vehicle. So you cannot go back in time and change these things, but hopefully I can give you some methods that will help you tweak and increase your chance of success in selling this vehicle, and also give any flippers out there some methods in which you can use to more successfully deal with salvage or rebuilt vehicles. Tip number 1 has to do with price, and price is the most important thing. If you are selling a salvage vehicle at a retail price or a private party value, you will be waiting for the rest of your life to sell that car. On the flip side, if you are selling a salvage or branded vehicle, branded title vehicle at 50% of the retail value or less, buyers are going to be super suspicious about your vehicle, and nobody's going to want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. They're going to think the car is junk. Buyers of rebuilt cars expect a deal, and rightfully so. So if you're in the business of buying damaged cars and turning them for profit, you need to take this into consideration before you even ever bid on the vehicle. The success of flipping salvage cars lies in the fact that you buy cheap and you sell cheap. It just doesn't work any other way. So if you're trying to sell a branded title vehicle or just a clean title vehicle with a really ugly Carfax, it needs to be priced accordingly. So if the car has a branded title, you need to be at around 20% under the retail value and work your way down from there. If it's a clean title but with an ugly Carfax, you might be able to start at around 10%. And honestly, the majority of the vehicles that I've sold in the past ended up selling between 20 and 30% under the listed average retail value. I say average because there's a lot of different methods for getting retail values. There's Kelley Blue Book, there's NADA, there's other ones out there, but I think those two would probably be the most accurate. You can also use Carfax, Cars.com, and TrueCar. They will have some useful information. Actual sold prices on eBay will give you some interesting insights because you can isolate by the title status, whether it was rebuilt or salvage or clean. Now, Edmunds is on a completely different planet. I don't know where they get their information. I wouldn't rely on Edmunds, honestly, as a buyer or a seller, but it makes for a good laugh every once in a while. Also understand that the more valuable the car is, the smaller the pool of potential buyers will be, because most likely you'll be selling cars to cash buyers due to the fact that most banks would not loan on a branded title vehicle. So if you think about it, think about the amount of people that have $5,000 in the bank versus the amount of people that have $50,000 in the bank. So you'll typically be able to sell vehicles that are worth maybe less money at a lower value. That will be an easier transaction. Of course, there's always exceptions to every rule, but generally this is true. Tip 2 has to do with quality. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. Selling a rebuilt or branded title vehicle can be super challenging sometimes. But every once in a while, selling a branded title vehicle can be pretty easy. Getting a potential buyer to look at your car is difficult, even if it's sometimes a clean title vehicle, but it's a real shame to lose a buyer because the quality of your repair is poor. So success at buying and selling salvage cars depends greatly on the quality of the work that was done. You need to be your biggest critic and look at these cars as if you were buying them for top dollar. If it bothers you, it's going to bother them. So before you even ever debut a car, I would show it to some family and friends or some other people that are not looking to buy your car so you can get some feedback. Also, if you get a potential buyer to actually look at your car and he walks away from the deal without giving you any feedback, you've really lost some really valuable information. So I always try to ask people what they think of the vehicle. Sometimes they'll tell you something that might hurt or be insulting, but it's really the best thing to not be insulted, but to really take that feedback as constructive criticism and try to fix whatever issues they might have brought out so that the next buyer won't have those objections. Obviously, you're not going to be able to please every single person. Some people are just impossible to please. And remember too that you might get buyer one come through, say that your car is junk, it's worthless, and then buyer two comes around and he thinks that the car is amazing, it's the best deal ever. So don't ever let one person's opinion of the car bring you down, but it's important to listen, to learn, to adapt, and be patient. And if you have confidence in the quality of your work, it's going to show on how you talk to people, and it's going to make a potential buyer more comfortable with the deal. Tip 3 has to do with patience. There's been many times in the past that I've dealt with a clean title, one owner vehicle that I was trying to sell, and I thought it would sell in just a few days, and it ended up taking several months. And then there's times where I bought a vehicle that was wrecked. I didn't want to have to deal with it, so I just listed it for sale, completely damaged with a salvage title, not even drivable, and it sold in just a few days. A lot of this has to do obviously with your price point, but sometimes it also has to do with selling at the right time or the wrong time. Maybe your vehicle is in demand. Maybe there's a ton of cars just like yours that are listed online and everybody's competing for the best price. Either way, you have to prepare yourself mentally and financially for the long haul should it happen. So if you're trying to sell cars, if you're buying and selling salvage cars at the upper limit of your budget, let's say you had 10 grand to work with and you just spent it all and you're working with that, but you're really strapped to get that money back. Well, you're going to be desperate to get that money back. And unfortunately, when you talk to potential buyers, it's going to shine through unless you're a really special person. So it's very good to operate well within your budget so you don't ever get into that situation where you are desperate to sell. And so one way to help with that is many rebuilders daily drive their vehicles, so they kind of serve as a dual purpose, so that if you're not selling it, well, at least you're getting some good use out of it. So you've got to be patient with salvage cars and operate well within your budget. Tip number 4 has to do with information. Too much information or too little information will ruin a sale every single time. When you sell a salvage car, it's best to deal with those issues or the issue of that nasty salvage history or whatever accident that car was in. It's better to deal with those issues as soon as possible. Don't leave them as an elephant in the room. So obviously, if your car has a branded or ugly Carfax, a branded title or ugly Carfax, don't ever hide that. Tricking people is a super short-sighted business plan. Remember, you're trying to find the right buyer. Do you really want to waste your time with people who aren't the right buyer? So that being said, do you scream from the mountaintops that your car was previously damaged and is salvaged? Or do you kind of whisper it in their ears, so to speak? Well, it depends. So my recommendation is if you are advertising locally, make sure that you put somewhere in the ad the vehicle's past, whether it has a salvage or branded title. You are definitely obligated to do that legally, and it's the right thing to do. But also realize that many people just graze over information. They skim over it quickly. And that's a good thing, because you do want to get people to actually come and look at your vehicle. Because if the first thing in your description is that this car is rebuilt, it's salvage, it was totaled, you're going to lose a lot of buyers. So yes, I'm not saying hide the information, but you put it in there, but put it somewhere where it's like they would have to read the entire description. So you actually get people to look at that car. And when you get people to look at your car, if the quality of your repair is good, and they see it, they might possibly fall in love with your vehicle. And then at the end, you can remind them that your vehicle has this history. Sometimes you'll get people to walk away because of that statement, but sometimes they may actually consider buying your car. Some of these people may not even know what a salvage or rebuilt, or they don't know anything about this kind of stuff. So you may have to explain it to them. And it's important that when you explain it to them, you explain it to them properly. Don't just say, oh yeah, the car was total, it was just found in a swamp. No. What you want to do is you want to explain to them what really happens when a car ends up with a salvage title. And what happens is that when a person gets in an accident, the insurance company will either fix that car, or they will take possession of it and liquidate it. So in that case, the car was not fixed. The insurance company took ownership of that vehicle. They liquidated it. You obtained it. You repaired it for a lower amount, which they were not able to do because they only deal with probably high-end body shops, or maybe just body shops that have a high labor rate. So it's not worth it for them, but for you, you can get the work done for a reasonable amount. And now that you have actually fixed that car properly, you are offering it for sale, it's been inspected, and now it's safe to drive. However, you have to let them know that the title was branded, which means they've made notation on that title that happened. You can never remove that from the title, and it does affect the value of the vehicle, but it doesn't mean the car is a bad car. So it's important to explain it properly to people and make them comfortable with the deal. And sometimes you will be able to convert these type of people who don't know what a salvage or rebuilt car is. Obviously explaining them all the facts and letting them make their own decision, but sometimes people will actually go with you. Now, if you are selling the car though, and you have a listing and somebody tells you they're coming from a very far distance to see your car, or maybe you've advertised it nationally and somebody has to travel from out of state to see your car, make sure that nobody misses the fact that your car was previously salvaged or rebuilt, because they will be upset with you even if it was their fault that they missed this information. It's just better for you to avoid that situation and just make sure that they know up front what kind of deal this is. Also, when you ask, people will ask you about the accident history. Be prepared to have photos of that vehicle in its damaged state, and also be prepared to be able to describe some of the work that was done. Nobody wants to buy a complete question mark. So if you don't have this information, you are at a huge disadvantage, and you're going to have a really tough time selling that car. So if you don't have this information, get on the net, try to find some photos of that vehicle as it was being sold at the salvage auction, if that was where it was originally obtained. You can go to a website such as autoauctions.io or a similar website, and you can just Google the VIN as well to try to find photos and try to be able to explain what kind of repair was done. People are going to want to know what part of the car was fixed, because when they go to sell that car in the future, that is a story that needs to be passed to future buyers as well. Also, if there ever arises some issue, some mechanical issue or some type of issue to the vehicle, it helps to know what was done to the car. So people need this kind of information. Without it, they may be uncomfortable buying your vehicle. And so while this information will definitely help you with the deal, too much information too soon will destroy the deal every single time. So when somebody asks you for pictures of the car, give them the pictures of the car. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to put in your listing pictures of the damaged state of the vehicle. I don't think there's a lot of people that just don't understand what can be fixed and what can't be fixed. But if they ask for it, give them the information. If they ask you a question about what was done, give them the information. Don't try to hide anything. However, it's never a good idea to just start ranting about every single bolt you turn and every little thing that you did to the car. In this situation, you may sound too eager. So what you want to do is listen to their questions, answer their questions, be honest about what you've done to the vehicle, but you want to answer their question with enough information, no more, no less. Be open and honest, listen more, talk less, and you have to be confident in your work, and then the potential buyer will be confident with you. And always remember that as you get into higher ticket vehicles, if you plan on doing that, you're going to find out that their standards are going to be much, much higher. So, and they're going to size you up very quickly as to whether or not you know what you're talking about. So it's probably not a good idea to jump into the deep end of the pool too quickly when it comes to dealing with higher ticket cars too soon. Tip number 5 is where to list the vehicles. You should advertise that vehicle anywhere and everywhere you can. It's a good idea to get a sign on that vehicle. I mean, this is real basic stuff here, but on a salvage vehicle, if they can see that that car is in nice condition and they see that the price is low, that's a great way to get a potential buyer. And if you're not on the internet, you are definitely invisible. So make sure you get it on Craigslist, Cars.com, LetGo, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, and any social and media accounts. You want to get it on any type of listing and anywhere at the same time. There's so many cheap and free ways to get cars listed on the net. Now, if your car is a little bit more of an uncommon car, maybe it's something that's kind of unique or rare, you might consider getting some type of national exposure on AutoTrader or eBay or something like that. Always remove and relist ads regularly. You don't want people to see that you have had this vehicle up for sale for 6 months or more. That's not going to help you. So delete the ad and renew it. Don't hide your VIN. That will also make people very suspicious. And have as many quality photos as that site will let you have. And also consider getting some type of picture hosting service so you can post additional photos. For national ads, this is definitely something you want to do. And for national ads, you're going to want to have some type of video because not a lot of people do that. And that really, really helps people to get a good idea of what kind of condition your car is in. And it makes people much more comfortable. And you are going to put yourself way above the competition because not a lot of people do that for national ads. Tip number 6 is to save your time. Weed out the wrong buyers as quickly as possible. Most likely, if you're selling a salvage title car and the potential buyer asks for a Carfax right off the bat, the buyer is probably the wrong buyer because either they don't understand the purpose of a Carfax or they didn't read the ad. So it is true that a Carfax will sometimes have some service history records on it. So it is a reasonable question to ask, but just recognize that they're probably the wrong buyer. Also, people asking for service records, these type of buyers are usually pretty picky. You can understand why they would ask for service records, but it's not something you're going to have. And most likely, if they need service records, they're not going to be able to handle the fact that the car was a salvage car. Also, in my experience, if the first thing the buyer talks about is price, if he tries to make you an offer, and I don't care if it's a high offer or a lowball offer, most likely they are not a serious buyer. You have to think about the kind of questions a serious buyer will actually ask. And a serious buyer who's ready to buy a car wants to know a little bit about the history of your car and maybe why you're selling it. Now, I'm not saying this is always the case, and I'm not saying you should shoo away these people and be rude to them. Sometimes you can convert these people to actual buyers, but you need to recognize what type of a request or where this is coming from and realize that this isn't just this shouldn't discourage you because it didn't work out with this type of person. This type of person may not be the right buyer. Also, sometimes you're going to get requests for people to do a PPI or a pre-purchase inspection, which means they want to take your car to a mechanic that they pay in order for that mechanic to do an inspection, and then that mechanic will privately relay that information to the buyer. Whether or not you want to do a pre-purchase inspection is completely up to you, but just know that in my experience, rarely do these deals ever work out. And the reason why I suspect, is that show me a mechanic who's willing to recommend a previously salvaged car when he's being paid the exact same amount, whether or not he gives it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, he's still being paid. And honestly, most mechanics probably would rather be cautious about this. Just tell the potential buyer to keep looking, get paid their $50 fee or whatever, and they don't have to deal with that guy later on down the road when he finds out the car is a piece of junk. It's just safer for them to tell them that the car is not a good car. So I might do a PPI from time to time if it's at a place and time that's convenient for me. But a lot of times I know through experience that these things don't work out. So it's important to take that into consideration and just understand that there is a lot of buyers out there that don't have all these high requirements. They always come along sooner or later. And when you do, if you do decide to do a PPI, just make sure that you watch that mechanic like a hawk. There's some bad eggs out there that want to maybe harvest parts off your car, or they might unintentionally damage your car and just make extra work for you. So don't trust your vehicle in the hands of other people. Common sense stuff, but it's important to know. Tip number 7 is along these lines, and that is protect yourself. These are just general guidelines for selling anything or any vehicle, but it's good to know with vehicles, but it's definitely not a good idea to initially bring these buyers to your house. Try to meet people at a public place and size them up first if you ever bring them to your house, if you choose to do that. Most buyers are going to be cash buyers, but some will want to do a cashier's check, and understandably so. Some people are not comfortable with carrying around a lot of cash. So if they do that, make sure that you look at that cashier's check, and if there's a phone number on that cashier's check, don't call that phone number. Get on the net, find out the phone number of that financial institution, call, verify funds, try to do the deal during banking hours so that you can do that. Sometimes you're going to get people that want to use a personal check. I am not comfortable with personal checks, but if you do accept them, make sure the buyer knows that you're going to need their driver's license, a copy of it, and you're going to have to wait several days for that money to clear, or you'll just have to go down to the bank and cash it immediately. But just protect yourself in that way. Know how to identify counterfeit money, because there's a lot of that going on as well in the rebuilt and salvage title world. If they want to wire you money, obviously make sure it clears, and try to bring another person to the deal if you can. Just use common sense. If it doesn't feel right, walk away. And this is super important. If you sell a title branded vehicle, make sure that the buyer signs some sort of document that he was made aware of that fact, because they could come back and have a legal basis to make you buy that vehicle back. So you want to make sure they sign some type of document. So if you make sure that your price and your quality is in check, if you have patience, if you get and give the right amount of information, if you advertise properly, and you make sure not to waste your time and you protect yourself, you can successfully flip salvage cars. So please make any comments below. Stay tuned for future videos on this subject. Follow me on Instagram for all the in-between stuff. I truly appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time. Gossip